Good evening. Welcome to the Blount County Corrections Partnership Meeting, November 30th, 2015. At this time, I'll ask Ms. Pitts to read the emergency evacuation announcement.
In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm may sound. Everyone should exit the building by way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you have reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the building. Please be mindful of others evacuating of emergency vehicles. In the event of severe weather in the area, the chairperson of the committee will determine if there is a need to evacuate to the designated severe weather shelter. If the chairperson recommends evacuation to the designated severe weather shelter area, everyone should go to the second floor by using the interior staircase. The severe weather shelter area is marked by signage. Please do not leave the shelter until the severe weather has left the area. Also, please be mindful of others evacuating as well.
At this time, I'd like to take a moment to observe and honor the passing of Ms. Kathy Shields, Director of EMA. Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Pitts.
John Adams. Here. Rick Carver. Here. Mike Kaler. Here. Jeff French. Here. Judge Gallegos. Here. Judge Harrington. Here. Jeff Hedrick. Here. Tawna Monroe. Randy Vineyard. You have 1 absent and 8 present. You have a quorum.
Next item is item B, setting of the agenda. The chair will stand for a motion to set agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor saying aye. The agenda is set. Next item is C, approval of minutes. Chair will stand for a motion to approve the minutes of the June 24, 2015 meeting. Discussion?
Yeah, I have discussion. It says under new business, he explained issues concerning measurable progress and putting a viable plan of action in place and a report which would be created and submitted to the Board of Control for consideration in September regarding continuation of certification. He reminded the members when they get the studies to not sit on it because there is a sense of urgency. There was no action taken in this matter. I have emailed the mayor's office and the commission secretary, and neither one of them have that report that's referenced there. So that kind of information needs to start being supplied to us in a timely manner. All that, what's referenced in our minutes, we should have had in our packet today. Is that the, are they referring to, there's no mention in there of Jim Hart's report. It says would be created and submitted to the Board of Control. A viable plan of action. That plan of action is not in our report. What was submitted to the Board of Control is not in our report. It is not in our packet. That information should be provided to us. The mayor's office doesn't even have it. I think the mayor has to sign off on that, if I understand it correctly. So that there's a communication problem here, and we need to really work on improving communication. So thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor saying aye. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. Item D, public input on items on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to item E, unfinished business. Seeing none listed, we'll move on to item F, new business. First order is reports from the University of Tennessee Institute for Public Service, County Technical Assistance Service, and the Tennessee Corrections Institute, which that is the report in your folder on your desk today. Ms. Monroe?
Is Mr. Hart going to come speak to us about this report?
He is not. He's going to, yes, to answer your question. He just finished. Obviously, we're just getting it. And what they want to do, and their recommendation is that we take this report, study it for 30 days, and then Mr. Hart, Mr. Bass, and along with Beth Ash, we'll sit down at the next meeting, which we have talked about this morning when we're looking at January 19th.
So Beth Ash is going to come to the meeting?
It's my understanding. That's I'm not going to tell you definitely, but that's what I was hearing this morning.
Okay. So this is just for information at this point. We're not really it's just to take home and read it.
Study it, form questions.
And bring those in January.
And bring those back January 19th. Bear in mind, this is taking the study from 2 years ago. Jim has looked at it, and he's mixed it in with his study points that he thought were good and well taken and applied to Blount County and our situation, and points that weren't. So he's taken that report as well. And then come back January 19, have direct questions for them, conversations. And then at that point, let's discuss, if we still want to do this guide with Mr. Kalmanoff. We're very we don't have anything to hide. We want to see his report that's here and now, and see if that answers and addresses all questions. If it doesn't, we're going to have questions for him. And then if we want to see Mr. Kalmanoff, I think we need to discuss that as well.
All right. A 19-page review is no replacement for a 90-page report, though. It's fine to have more information. This is good, but we should not think that this replaces this. So are we going to have so should we recommend then that we have a hearing to the commission? Or are they just going to come do a hearing for this group?
They're coming to the next meeting for this group. That's correct.
Okay, this is good to have.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Ms. Monroe?
This is good to have. I hope that this will be the start of more open communication, a more functional body. We've been very dysfunctional. The only paperwork that I have is the paperwork that I ask for. And I have to do open records requests to even get it. And then I find that a lot of offices that should have this paperwork don't even have the paperwork. So I hope that we can start having monthly meetings. There is a lot to review. I hope we can start meeting on a more consistent basis, and that when we meet, as soon as these reports are handed out, we should be getting that information in our next meeting packet. We've not been getting that information. We should have a meeting where the latest TCI inspection report, we should have at one of our meetings, should have the sheriff's office explain that report to us and explain to us what they're doing to correct these things, explain the plan of action that they've submitted or that they've agreed to with the Board of Control, all of those things. We should be discussing all of that. We should be given all this information in a timely manner and have open public discussion about all these things, and we're not getting that, and we're not doing that. So I hope that this is the start. You all wanted Jim Hart's recommendations. I hope that this will be the start of many more things to come that we can start to discuss. Thank you.
Judge Harrington.
Well, obviously, this is a report that's dated November the 23rd, 2015. We've just received it in our packet this evening. I, for one, would like an opportunity to review it in depth. I'm not really worried about length, 90 pages versus 19. It's more about the quality of the content. And so I would like an opportunity to review this in depth and compare it to, because I had some issues with the other report and for accuracy. So I'm just asking for whether that be 30 days, that seems appropriate. I do already have a commitment on the 19th of January, but obviously I don't need to be here. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
I would like to suggest that this report be given to all the commissioners, and also an invitation when we do set up the next meeting for them to attend also, to be in the audience to hear the report. So that way they're hearing exactly what we're hearing, and maybe they can attend or they can't attend, I don't know. But I would like to see this report with all the commissioners so they have that same opportunity to review what we're seeing. Thank you.
Does that need to be made in a formal recommendation, or can that information just be sent to the commission? I mean, if you want to move to send it, you can do that.
Yeah, it needs to be in form of motion. You've got that. We have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Would you like this given to them because we're meeting in January for the commission, we're not meeting in December? So do you want me to just put it in their mailbox?
Yes.
Or email it to
We'll
them?
put it in their mailbox.
Maybe send them an email, just let them know it's in there.
Yeah, we'll put it in their mailbox.
Okay.
No further discussion. Roll call.
John Adams? Yes. Rick Carver?
Yes.
Mike Kaler? Yes. Jeff French? Jeff Hedrick?
Yes.
Motion passes. I'm sorry, Tana Monroe, excuse me. I was trying to.
Okay, item 2 on new business, discussion regarding keeping of federal prisoners.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some comments and discussion, but I would like to hear from the sheriff since he's here. Since he signed this agreement, I'd like to hear from him as to why he thinks this is a good thing. I would like for him to explain, since there was a modification to the agreement, what standards the county now has to comply with. I would, so if he would, I'd like to hear from him directly, and I have some questions for him, if he's willing.
Good evening. So do you want me to just, do you want to ask me questions or what?
It's frequently stated that we make money keeping the federal prisoners, but the evidence that I've seen suggests otherwise. So I would like to hear from you as to the history of it, why we keep federal prisoners. You signed the report. Did the commission ever approve?
No.
Okay.
Statutorily, that's the only contract that I can sign is inmate contracts. Now, you said you had some issues. What was your issues?
I want to hear from you as to why you think this is a good thing from the
Okay.
community. Since you've signed it, I assume that you would think it's good for the community. Let's hear why you think it's good for
Okay.
Blount County to do this.
Let me tell you how it started. We moved in a new facility, and we had some empty bed spaces. And the way that facility, and most facilities are designed, if you build it for 350 beds and you have 150, 200 in there, it costs basically the same as it would if it was full, because you have fixed positions that you have to staff. 2 people has to be in a control center, a certain number in each tower, the rovers, the kitchen. So, if you're going to have that fixed expenditure. So we decided in about 2000, 2001, the federal judges came to see me. Knox County was keeping them at the time, and they were not happy with their service over there. So we had a couple federal judges that lived in Blount County, and they came to see me, and they talked to me about bringing some people over here. Well, having the empty bed space at the time, with the expenditure that we had, we decided it would be a good way to offset the fixed expenditure. And that has continued. We renegotiated probably in 2008, Chief, renegotiated the contract from $45 a day to $58.50 a day. And again, that went up with the progression of the expenses and everything. And at that time also, that certain percentage of that was earmarked. We started with 40 inmates. It was earmarked to buy cruisers with. That way the money would come in, we generate the money, go back in the general fund, and come back out to buy the cruisers so we could have a fixed number of cars, and that has been in place to this day. When you look at what the federal government does versus the TDOC, they pay us today $58.50. They provide the medical. That's included us transporting them to and from. We feed the inmates for under $3 a day, $2.50 to $3 a day, what it costs to feed an inmate. To clothe the inmate for up to a year or two, as long as that stuff lasts, is less than around $20, $22, Chief. So you look at we're already there, we're already working, we already have the physical plant in place. I thought, and I think it has proven true, we generated over $33 million since we started counting them. That's 2.5 times or a time and a half what the Justice Center cost. And not only my job is to protect the citizens and do the different statutory duties, my job is to be a good servant of the taxpayer, be a good steward of the tax dollars. I'm a taxpayer also, and I see the revenue coming in. We were operating, still I think to this day, operating this facility over there cheaper than we were operating the old facility in 1999. The revenue that we bring in versus expenditure is less than we were spending in 1999 as taxpayers. So I think that has proven to be a good decision of mine.
You said that the feds pay the medical expenses. That's only if you go outside of the jail, correct? Inside the jail, we pay the medical expenses.
Well, inside the service, for us through day-to-day, giving them aspirin, check them, see if they have we determine whether they need to go out or not. We look at what their symptoms. We notify the marshal service before we move them out and take them to the hospital. But that medical staff there is going to be there for us anyway. Having an extra 70, 80 prisoners, 100 prisoners, we still have to have that medical staff in place. So they're going to be there anyway.
Yeah, but you have additional cost and handling of them from the day-to-day expense.
Such as?
Okay. As far as the monetary aspect, at the commission meeting earlier this month with the Luke Bryant concert, it was stated that you billed at a rate of $35 an hour.
Correct.
Okay, in this modification of intergovernmental agreement, it says that you are billing a guard transportation hourly rate of $14 an hour. That's less than half of what the private sector is being charged.
First of all, Luke Bryant has nothing to do with my facility. So I don't understand the comparison on that.
Let's stay
That's-
on task of the.
Well, we're
keeping a-
talking about the
keeping a
cost.
federal prisoners.
You know, the cost is, he has stated that he thinks that it has been a good financial thing for Blount
It
County.
is. At the time we negotiated that,
This
that was the hourly rate that we pay we were paying a correctional officer. That was the hourly rate that we were paying them. So that's what we're charging. We can't say we're paying them 14, but we want to charge you 27 or 30 or 35. You know, we can't, they know what our pay is in the negotiation process.
Right, but I don't see how we can charge one person an hourly rate and charge the federal government less than half and say that we're coming out to the good on this.
Luke Bryan was paid to the employees. The county was a flow through. They were working for Luke Bryan. That's what an off-duty deputy sheriff makes between 25 and 30 an hour. Because they're off-duty, they've already worked their time here. That's a contract between them, basically, but we did use the county as a flow through.
But do you think $14 an hour is covering the cost of these deputies plus their benefits? I don't.
We're discussing federal prisoners.
And that's exactly what I'm discussing.
Okay.
That's what I'm discussing.
Yes.
Go ahead, Chief.
The $14 is a transportation rate that we were charged if we would take an inmate to federal court, to the hospital. The Luke Bryant rate is a rate that deputies were paid that were not on duty and were getting paid an overtime rate.
Some of these transportations would occur in possibly overtime situations as well. I mean, they may be on their 40 hours and they may be doing overtime.
There possibly could be, but like I said, this is two separate animals when you look at the rates are totally, this is a rate that if we we have a transport officer transport someone to the federal facility, this was their pay rate that we charged based on what we paid this person on an average. So
Okay,
you're
so
looking at a regular rate versus an overtime rate. So you're looking at apples and oranges when you're comparing those two.
Not necessarily. They may have been on overtime when they're transporting.
Okay, the federal courts are open, but during the daytime, that's when our staff works for transportation. They wouldn't be on overtime, Ms. Monroe. If you want to sit here and if you want to ask some legitimate questions, I'm willing to comply and answer everything. But something, if you want to take something and pick it out, I'm not going to play those games with you.
I'm not playing a game.
Well, it sounds like it.
This is a legitimate figure I'm looking at in the paperwork for what the county is billing the federal government. This seems to me to be one of the few situations on the planet where the federal government's getting the better end of the deal. I mean,
So if we renegotiate those prices with the federal government sometime in the future and it goes up, will you pay those deputies more?
if
Would
the
you?
money
Will
was
you?
there, then then we might have the money to pay them more.
But if the rate goes up, are you going to give that money to the federal prisoner, to the employees?
You know good and well I can't set their salaries. I don't have any say-so over
You're
that.
talking about their salaries.
I haven't even
Okay, I'm
been
done.
able to
Okay,
get
go
that.
ahead. Do you have any other questions, Mel?
Federal prisoners, this is the discussion.
On the agreement, on the modification for the Rape Prevention Act and for, I thought I read something about complying with health care. But did that up the standards that you all have to comply with in order to keep federal inmates?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
can I answer that question too?
Yes.
I'd like to know what it was, but go ahead.
The rape, the prevention that you're talking about is something that we have to adhere to regardless if we house federal inmates. It's called PAREA, and we have a compliance officer in the adult correction facility and in juvenile. And that's a mandate that we're gonna have to, we're going through the process of making sure we're in compliance with that. If you've been in the facility and you've seen the placards of notification, there's reporting, there's audits that we have to do. So this is in no way in addition to anything to do with housing a federal inmate. It would be a requirement for any inmate or any situation that we're in when we house people
Okay.
in the Blount County Jail.
Okay, it does, but it does say that it was, the intergovernmental agreement was modified because of this.
Because the law changed. And it
Well, I would think,
made
if it just automatically, everybody had to follow it because it's federal law, why do you have to come back and amend the agreement? If everybody has to comply with it already, I don't see why the agreement would have to be amended. Okay, under the liabilities, it says in this agreement, essentially, that we will hold the federal government harmless. There's a lot of risk associated with housing federal inmates. Now, if we had the bed space, we could sit down and discuss the merits of keeping versus not keeping federal prisoners, but we don't even have the bed space. I've heard from 2 county commissioners that the number of federal inmates has been reduced. Could you please explain to us how many and why?
Why they've been reduced? I think because you've been in contact with the federal. Dr. Kavanaugh has been in contact with the federal government in Washington, D.C., and they've came in and reduced some of them. Is that right?
I have made one phone call to the federal government over this, and it was last week, and I spoke to a skeleton crew and did not get any answers, so it was not me.
Their revenue's gone the last 3 months probably short $250,000 than what it was. And we're fine with reducing them down. We just want to keep some to offset the fixed expenditures that we're incurring.
How many are we keeping roughly? I know it changes from day to day.
It does change. Air range right now, they got down to 70. I think air range is between 80 and 110 roughly. And how many do we have today? We have 84 today. So, 2 years ago we had 180 in there.
All right.
Mr. Prince, you're recognized.
I was just gonna give the number out.
Go ahead.
Of the number of inmates that we currently house. But it was already answered.
Okay, in this year's budget, we're averaging about 80, a little over 80 right now. But in this year's budget, there was a budgeted 30% reduction.
Correct.
That was before the feds reduced the number.
Correct.
So why did you reduce that in the budget?
Again, we know we're overcrowded, and we know at one point in time with people calling up to Washington, D.C. and different things like that they're going to be reduced. And we told the commission back in 2000 or 2001, I had a committee in my office, and we talked about the revenue, what would be coming in. I asked them and basically begged them not to put that revenue in lieu of property tax dollars. As the commission did through the years, instead of raising taxes when they needed to, we had this pool of money, a stream of money coming in, and they didn't raise taxes, and they put this in the tax revenue stream, basically. So what we're trying to do, because we know at one point in time, with the condition our facility is, they'll be reduced, and we don't want to come up here and say, County Commission, this year you're going to lose $2.4 million in revenue. You're going to have to raise taxes 8 cents for nothing. So we want to wean you off of that slowly but surely. Then when the money comes in, you can use it for debt service or whatever other needs may be. That's why it was reduced. It's calculated planning.
Okay, you said that we're a little over 80 right now, but the fiscal year 16 budget is only projecting 52 inmates.
Correct.
Federal inmates. So the reduction in federal revenue is not going to be a loss in the budget because it was never budgeted It's not in this year's budget. In
Well, there is
fact,
some
we're
money,
taking
there is
in.
budgeted,
we're ta-
how much, Chief? Around 800? Or that rate is 1.1 or 2 million maybe. About 1.1 and 1.2 million is a revenue source from federal inmates.
I've heard numbers thrown around.
Well, he's gonna find out, sure, exactly.
For 200 and something thousand dollars lost on the back of the taxpayers, and I've heard different
It
things.
has, it
thrown
is.
That was not even budgeted for in this year's budget. If we're at 80-something a day, then we are roughly 30 over what's already projected for in this year's budget.
A budget is just an estimate. If the money does not come in that we have been used to and it's reduced, then obviously it is a loss to taxpayers. They have to backfill somewhere to make that up.
So if the money exceeds what you all projected in the revenue, what happens? Does that go into the general fund?
100% of it goes to the general fund. The sheriff's office
Okay.
doesn't get any of it.
Well, for the record, we have budgeted 52 inmates for fiscal year 16, federal inmates. We do not have 80, we do not have 110. We had a budget based on 52 inmates.
Mr. French?
Yeah, I was just going to remind Ms. Monroe that she and I discussed this during the budget process, and I went over the reduction, and I'm not sure why you're acting like it's new news to
I'm not
you.
acting like it's new news. I'm pointing out that when people make the statement that we're losing revenue, it's not even in the budget for this year. The budget projections are substantially less than what will be taken in at the current rate of federal inmates.
You don't know that. You don't have a crystal ball. We could lose 80 inmates tomorrow.
Yeah, and I wish we would. As far as the budget.
Tell me why you're against it. I'm sorry to take Mr. Chairman some time, but you know, I like to know why you're not.
Two reasons. One, we're overcrowded.
We would be overcrowded without those inmates.
It's a human rights issue. We're overcrowded. We have more people than we do beds. And these are human beings that we're talking about. Secondly, this county is in debt up to its eyeballs. Our debt is the 8th highest county debt in the state of Tennessee. We haven't even paid off the debt from the last jail expansion. And it would be a tragedy to come in right now and dump more debt on the people of Blount County. If we had the bed space for this, I would sit down and consider it. It might be a thing to do if we had empty beds, but we don't have empty beds. And we have debt up to our eyeballs.
But Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, sir.
this is a process that's been going on since 1999. I think the sheriff told you, and it's not an issue that we brought federal inmates to this county last year. This is a 16-year-old process that we've been going through. So it's not like that all of a sudden we've come up on this overcrowding issue. And this is not something we've just turned over and figured out, oh, we're overcrowded. This has been going on since 1999, and when we did have bed space.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but we have to deal with where we're at now. We're overcrowded. We're severely overcrowded. People deserve punishment for wrongdoing, but there's 350 beds and typically over 500 human beings in there. We need to look at what we can do. We should get to work. I have long said we're going to have to spend some money to fix this problem. I don't deny that. We're not going to fix this problem without spending some money. But the question is where we can spend our money and get the best bang for our buck. This is not the penitentiary. There are some people who will go off and spend time in the penitentiary, but a lot of these people will be returned to society in a fairly short time frame, and our goal should be to put as many of them back out as productive members of society as we can safely do so. And so we've got to look at ways. We're either going to have to eventually, We can't kick this can forever. We're eventually either going to have to build or we're going to have to do things to reduce the number of people in there. And so I don't want to build. I think this is one of the areas, yes, we will lose some revenue. We will lose some revenue. Yes, we will, but we could also potentially not build in the process.
Mr. French, you recognize?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Mr. Carver?
One thing that is happening now, the drug court is now the recovery court, so they're expanding that. If I could, I'd like Mr. Garner to say what we've been doing. They are taking space that we have and expanding upon what property that we do own, if that's okay with you, Mr. Garner.
Mr. Chairman, I would like for us to have a meeting where we go into depth on that. That needs to be, right now we're discussing federal prisoners.
Well,
that's not really in order.
You talked about things that we could.
As far as
Oh, Mr. Carver has the floor.
You opened up on things that we could do. This is something that we're doing. We've expanded the personnel to be able, and we've expanded the umbrella of who they're going to bring in to work with. There's ministries out there that are doing education programs in the jails right now. And there's expansion that we're doing with the existing facilities that we have. I did ask and speak with Mr. Garner. I don't want to speak for him, but the things that he's doing right now just for the Recovery Foundation, that's a major step with the personnel and the space. And so that is a good step that I think we're making in addressing people in their needs, be it post-traumatic stress, be it drugs, be it alcohol, be it different things that are out there that are going on, and it's being addressed there to where that they have counselors and the others to work on it. But I do know that we're having additional space being worked on at this very moment. If Mr. Garner would like to speak about it, I would appreciate that time.
let's bring them in and put that on the agenda in January. Let's have an open discussion. I am all for expanding recovery court. We're going to have to do some things.
It is happening now at this very moment.
Well,
Mr. Carver, you have the floor.
Mr. Garner, would you want to say what you've done so far, or is it even necessary?
What we've done is we've taken our probationary building that we're adult probation is now, and the back half of that building was record storage. Excuse me. And we've renovated the ops center over on MacArthur Road, and we're going to move all of our record storage over there. So that frees up this space at the back of adult probation. So we're going to take that space, and thanks to Tammy Harrington there, she's really been a big motivator of this. We're going to move all the drug court people down there. We got office space for an additional probably 6 people down there. Right now, we're in the process of painting that facility. We've remodeled it completely. We've got new sheetrock here and there, and we're painting that facility now, putting new floor tiles down. And probably in the next month, you'll see us getting close to being finished with that project and ready to move those folks down there.
Thank you, Mr. Garner.
thank you for that update. That doesn't,
Mr. French, you
that does
recognized.
not move one prisoner, one inmate out of the
Excuse me, Mr. French is
jail.
recognized.
I was just going to give the number, the direct federal revenue is $1.1 million currently in the budget. And I think there needs to be a little bit of clarification on the federal inmates are not sentenced inmates. They are pretrial inmates, and I think that needs to be clarified because I think there's a misconception. Ms. Monroe said something about we're not running a prison. We're just holding these people for trial until they are sentenced or adjudicated, and then the federal government takes those people out and puts them in their federal prisons.
Okay, I have a
Judge Harrington,
question.
you're recognized.
Thank you, and anyone who works with me knows that I would never miss an opportunity to brag about our recovery court participants, and I would just like to recognize that they have also been providing some help in performing community service themselves and getting the offices ready. And so they are trying to give back by assisting Mr. Garner. And there are a substantial number of people that would otherwise be in the jail that are in recovery court. Not only are they working, but in their off hours, they're trying to get the offices ready as well. So, thank you.
Ms. Monroe, you're recognized.
Okay, I have a question for the sheriff. You stated that the jail consultant or I called Washington. I
Yes.
can tell you that I didn't cause the federal prisoners to be removed out of there. When they came in and removed the prisoners, or inmates, excuse me, the inmates, did they give you a stated reason?
Yes,
And what was that stated?
that's between me and them.
We're not called to task to operate the jail. That's not what we're here to do. We're working on overcrowding. We're one-sided.
If
missing
someone
the-
is going to make an allegation, then where's the proof?
We're not
An
here to run
allegation
the
was
jail. We're
made
here
that someone called.
to handle the overcrowding. Any further questions? Thank you, Sheriff
Thank you.
Blount. Discussions regarding keeping of federal prisoners. Next item, number 3, next meeting, Tuesday, January 19th, 2016, and we will move it from 5:30 to 6 to allow the folks from Nashville to get here safely. 6 p.m.? Yes, 6 o'clock. In this room. Item G, public input on items not on the agenda.
Hi, I'm Jamie Daly, Commissioner. I haven't prepared anything, but I know that all of you have the best interest of Blount County when you're working on this committee. I think it's time to set aside personal egos and differences and get to work and work together. We all want what is best for our county, and I think we need to be adults when we're doing this. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I request that at our next meeting, well, we're going to hear from them, okay, so I don't want to put too much on the next agenda, but the meeting after that, I would like for the sheriff's office and the mayor's office, since they have signed off on this plan of action, to come to this committee and to talk to us about the plan of action that we're under. I'd like a copy of it, and I'd like to hear from them about the plan of action and what we are doing to comply with the TCI requirements and what the Board of Control required as a plan of action. That on the January meeting, because we'll be very busy with CTAS coming in, but I hope that that can be the subject matter of a future meeting, because we need to start the process of talking about all these things, and it shouldn't be hard to get this information. Thank you.
For some reason, I think Ms. Monroe has amnesia, but you called me earlier today and asked for the report, and I've got it here, and I was going to give it to you. So I'm not sure why you keep acting like you have no idea about the report. I've got it right here, and I was going to give it to you, so I'm not sure.
Yes, but this body does
our
not
discussions seem to go out the door once you call me and I bring you information or we discuss something. It doesn't seem to resonate with you any longer. But Mr. Chairman, I have the report here, and I'll give a copy to the Secretary and Ms. Monroe personally, so that she asked for.
Ms. Monroe?
I think that was out of order. I could make personal attacks, but I have not. I think that was out of order. This process has been so dysfunctional, and we can do a lot better.
Motion to adjourn?